Hi! Today is a nice rainy day, so it's a perfect day to just stay inside and relax. Or in my case, I'm going to be making some bread. A minute ago I just made some good banana bread, which I have a video for if you want to check out. But right now, I'm going to be making some wheat bread. Good old hearty wheat bread. So you're going to need a lot of wheat flour and honey, and then a few other ingredients, and a little bit of patience, and you'll have a delicious, warm wheat bread loaf. 3 of them, actually. Alright, so in a big bowl, a pretty big one, you need 3 cups of warm water. Anytime you're making bread, warm water is 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So pour that in. Then you need a 1/3 cup of honey in here as well. Mine's a little old, so make sure you've got fresh honey. It should be nice and smooth. I used a whisk to stir my honey and warm water together really well. Kind of get the crystals out of it. Now we've got all this sugar and warm water, and we need something to eat the sugar and make our bread. That magical thing is yeast. Get an active dry or fast active. This is 1 tablespoon, which is 0.5 ounces, or 2 of those packets, because the packets are 1/4 ounce. So 2 of them is 1/2 ounce, which is 1 tablespoon. And then stir that in. This yeast is going to eat the sugar in our honey and begin to ferment. It's the basis of every bread. It's also the basis of beer, although beer is a different type of yeast, but it's the same process. Or similar anyway. Mix that together. Now to this, we're actually adding bread flour. And we need 5 cups of white bread flour, which is just your regular unbleached bread flour. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now at this point, I would stir these together with a wooden spoon, because it's just going to get clumpy with a whisk. Okay, now once this is once this is all stirred together, we need to get it into a warm place and let it rise for 30 minutes. One good technique I've learned for when you're trying to rise your doughs and things is to turn your oven on to like 200 degrees, 300 degrees, let it warm up for a minute, turn it off, and then rise your doughs in there with a damp towel over them. My oven's still a little too hot from the banana bread I just made, so I'm just going to rise this out somewhere on a counter. So if you have a warmer spot in your house, you can do it there. Otherwise, put it in a slightly warmed oven and get a nice moist towel over it. Not like a dripping wet towel, but say the towel you've been using to dry your dishes or dry your hands. It'll be kind of wet, and that helps it rise. So about 30 minutes, and you'll notice it grow a lot in size. Okay, so it's been a little over half an hour that I've had my dough sitting out. Bam! Look at that thing. You should know before taking the towel off anyway that it's going to be good, because you're really going to smell bread. I love making bread because it smells amazing. Alright, so we got to mix a few things into this. First, 3 tablespoons of melted butter. And if you want, you can kind of punch this down a little bit. You can use your hands if you want. It feels really good, but I'm going to wait a minute before we do that, just because we'll be kneading it in a minute. See, the yeast was eating all that sugar in the honey. And then some science happens and it poofs up. It's really fascinating if you want to learn about it. Then we need another 1/3 cup of honey. I think it's going to make it a very sweet kind of wheat bread, but maybe not. I don't know. I don't think I've ever made wheat bread. So you need a tablespoon of salt to cancel that reaction. Now stir this all together. Now to this, we add 2 cups of wheat flour. Whole wheat flour. So there's 1. There's 2. And then we're going to do another 1.5 cups, but we're going to knead those in. So mix those in as well. I'm still using a wooden spoon at this point, but you could have used your hands this whole time. But just with honey and melted butter and stuff, I prefer to use a wooden spoon until we get it to our floured surface. So one technique I always like to do, just to help it not stick to your hands too much, is get some vegetable shortening. You know, or just typical shortening. Rub that into your hands. Kind of gives your hands a non-stick coating, and then use that. See, the dough's not sticking to my hands very well. That's because the flour's been mixed in, but also because of the shortening on my hands. Alright, so we have a flat surface that you're going to be kneading on. Make sure it's clean. And then we're going to need about 1.5 cups of flour. The thing about breads is, they're not super exact with the flour, especially during the kneading process. If you're in a humid area, you're going to need more flour. If you're in a dry area, probably less. So I mean, it could be anywhere between 1 to 3 cups on here. Kind of make sure you spread this out a decent amount. And then I'm just going to get my dough onto it. And pour the rest out of the container, of course. At first, it's going to seem like a lot of flour, but as you knead, that sticky dough is going to absorb it. And that's good, because this is wheat flour, and this is what's going to make it wheat bread. So again, I'm rubbing some vegetable shortening on my hands. You know, over its fatty shortening, that's fine too. And just slowly begin to knead it. This is a huge recipe. Usually you get 1 9x5 loaf pan, sometimes 2. This one's actually 3. So I'm going to be nice and slow with this. You get to a point where it's smooth and elastic, and that's a good dough. It's nice and elastic. Doesn't stick to you. It's not too stretchy, but it's not too firm either. Now this dough is nice and elastic. As you can see, most of my flour is gone, and that's just from working the dough. It's absorbed it. So it kind of looks a lot like a clay or like a Play-Doh type consistency. So I'm going to get up the remaining little bit of flour in here, and then pretty soon we're going to put this into an oiled bowl, moist towel over it, put it in a slightly warmed up oven. Heat up your oven for like a minute, turn it off, moist towel, let it rise. Just like you did before, only now with this more completed dough. A lot of people make a triangle too, and if it holds well, your dough's good. So take a bowl, and then I like to use vegetable oil. You can use olive oil too, it doesn't matter. Just do a light amount, maybe like teaspoon, tablespoon, give or take. It's not an exact science. Take your loaf, put it in this bowl, this large bowl. I had to wash out my one from before. Turn it once, just to make sure it's nice and coated. You can turn it a few times. I don't think it's a big deal. Put your moist towel over it, just like before, and then get it into your slightly heated up oven. Don't keep your oven on, just heat it up a little bit, turn it off. I mean, barely hot at all, just a little warmer than room temperature. Put mine in there, close it, let it rise. I'd say at this point, let's wait about 40 minutes. Now that our dough is about to rise, or about to be done rising in the bowl, we need to prepare our 9-inch by 5-inch loaf pans. And the technique I like best is I just grease them with vegetable shortening. Because we're letting it rise, the dough rise in these 9 by 5-inch pans, I'm going to hold off on putting the flour in it. Usually you shake the flour around in them and it sticks to the shortening and it gives it that nice kind of floured edges you like seeing on a lot of breads. But I'm going to skip it for this one. So let's get our dough out of the oven that's been rising. And it says it should be about doubled in size. Oh yeah, it's doubled. And you'll smell it too, just like before. Bread smells great. Then you gotta punch it down, which is always fun. You'll feel all sorts of air come off of that. And you'll see it shrink down. Now what we need to do is divide this into 3 equal pieces. And put each one in a loaf pan. I'm going to kind of shape it out some. You don't have to be too picky about it. Just because rising it is going to make it expand again. And then usually you would put a towel over things when rising them, letting them rise. But for these, it wants them to actually come an inch over the top. I don't know if these two are going to do it. This one might. So in this case, I'm not putting a towel over them. Just from experience, I've had to unstick the towel to the dough, and you don't want that. But get your oven a little warm for them. Put them in quick, don't let a lot of your heat come out. And then I'd say it takes about 45 minutes, but keep an eye on them. Watch for the dough to rise above the edge, about an inch, or close to anyway. Okay, it's been 40 minutes. Let's see if the dough is rised above the top of the containers. Oh yeah, wow. Look at that. I'd say that's about an inch at the thicker parts. Not quite, but I'm happy enough with that to bake it. So let's take it out and preheat the oven to 350 degrees. And once it's done preheating, we're going to bake these suckers 25 to 30 minutes. Alright. Now that the oven is preheated to 350, I'm going to get these 3 loaves in there and bake them for 25 to 30 minutes. The recipe said do not overbake, so once they're pretty brown and solid, and you know it smells like baked bread, pull them out. Also make sure, I made this mistake with banana bread earlier, don't put it on too high a rack in the oven, because then the outside will look really done, but the inside might not be. So usually put it on a lower rack or kind of in the middle. So I've got my rack positioned in the middle. I'm going to get my loaf pans in there, spread them apart equally. 25 to 30 minutes, or until done. Alright, it's been a little less than 25 minutes. My oven runs a little bit hot, so I'm going to check on them. Yeah, those look pretty nice and brown on top. They seem pretty crisp too. So let's pull them out. And then I'm going to get them onto a cooling rack really soon. Alright, so if you greased your pans well enough, they should fall out on the rack pretty easily. You probably will have to get a butter knife in there to loosen them up a little bit. There we go. Oh yeah, that looks good. I'm going to touch it with my bare hands quickly and flip it over. Now what you need to do is take 2 tablespoons of melted butter and brush it onto the tops. This will help your crust stay nice and soft. So get them all out on your cooling rack, brush them all with your 2 tablespoons of butter, let them cool completely, cut them into nice slices, and you've got some delicious wheat bread.